More than 87,000 people cast their ballots in the special election this week on abortion, far more than came out for the recent mayoral election. The proposal to ban the procedure after 20 weeks of pregnancy was defeated with 55% of the voters opposing, 45% supporting. The contentious issue attracted hundreds of thousands of dollars from backers and opponents. Affiliates of the American Civil Liberties Union and Planned Parenthood have poured money into the campaign opposing the ban. On the other side, funding in favor came from the Susan B. Anthony list and others. Joining us to talk about this and other news of the week is one of our line regulars, Tom Garrity of the Garrity Group. Our other line regular is here today, Rob Nikolewski of the New Mexico Watchdog. They're joined by our guest, former State Senator Dee Dee Feldman is here, and a new face, Julianne Grimm, editor of the Santa Fe Reporter, joins us for the first time. Julie, welcome.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Absolutely. This is the second time we've had a voter, Dee Dee, the second time we've had a voter-driven initiative here. There's so much to talk about this issue. Let's just start there, though. We've got turnout to discuss. We've got who turned out where. But voter-driven initiatives or things like this, is there any upshot to this? It's not been used a whole lot up until this point. Now we have a second one that went down in defeat. What's your sense of that?
Well, this was obviously a nationally driven effort by the anti-abortion Operation Rescue folks to use that process and to use it not just in Albuquerque, but in other localities. And I think we're going to see something in Valencia County.
What do you mean by that? See something in Valencia County?
I think they've indicated they're interested in doing some sort of initiative, or maybe it's a city council bill in
the council,
gotcha. in Valencia County. But this is a new strategy on their part, nationwide, and this is why this results of yesterday's election are so big, is because this was the first time that they went to the local and municipal level, and everybody was watching to see what happened. There was a lot of national coverage.
Sure.
The New York Times was here, the Christian Science Monitor was here, and it was a resounding defeat.
Let me ask Tom about that. I like you used the word resounding there. There are wins and then there are wins. There are wins that send messages. There are wins you sort of squeak by and everybody hears the same thing, like we almost won. 10 points, though, is a pretty good win. Is that big enough, however, to send that kind of resounding message that Dee Dee was talking about?
In a typical campaign, yes, it would be enough. This is not a typical campaign. I mean, this has been going on for the last 20 years as far as the feuding goes. What I hope to see next go around is that the organizations that wanted to promote the change will have changed their tactics. Because basically everybody else has changed their tactics, not their principles, but as far as how they reach out and how they connect and how they're relevant to their target audiences. And basically the tactics that we saw this go around are the same tactics that we've seen year after year after year after year.
I want to talk about the Holocaust Museum situation particularly, where those folks came in from out of town that want to have this ban and rolled into a place locally. My sense of it is that woke up a tiger. That one thing right there, that folks were really quite put off by that. And under tactics, again, those kind of tactics in polling, did anything come up in your view on how that works or doesn't work in a town like ours?
Whenever you have, one size does not fit all in New Mexico. And I think that's one thing that perhaps everybody has seen is that, the tactics that might work in other places are not going to work here. It's not that we're a not in our backyard kind of place, but it's, the messaging is unique, the culture is unique. Just because it plays in Philadelphia, just because it plays in Omaha, doesn't mean it's going to play here. And I think that, to Dee Dee's point, what we're seeing with the local option voting, for lack of a better term, that's just a sign of things to come. Environmental groups have been using the same approach on the whole issue of fracking. Going to counties to get fracking banned in places where there is no oil and gas activity. So so the local option is going to be very interesting to see how that plays out over the coming years.
We've already seen that here in Albuquerque because the minimum wage referendum, also the referendum that passed. It was a tough and wise move on the part of the Democrats earlier this year when they made sure that anyone who's running for a city council seat or a mayoral seat has to get 50% to institute a runoff. That was done also through the same sort of thing. I think Tom's right. I think you're going to see a lot more of this. From both sides of the political spectrum.
Absolutely. Your sense of who came out, and Rob Nikolewski, I asked that under the idea that when the first initial polling from the Journal and I forgot their poll says, Brian Sanderoff, excuse me, first came out, 54% at that time, back in September, were for this. What made the difference here? What was the swing in your view that made the difference here? Was it the get out the vote only, or was there something else going on here?
I think there's probably more motivated pro-choice people than there are motivated pro-life people. That was my
Even
take
with
on this.
all this activity and all this other stuff, it couldn't.
I think these are issues where positions are calcified.
Gotcha.
I mean, if you're a dyed-in-the-wool supporter or opponent of abortion,
Right.
you've made up your mind.
Right.
And I think there were more people here, and it also had lots of other ramifications beyond the abortion vote.
That's right.
too.
Julianne, good to see you, by the way. Thank you for coming and your first time here. Rob makes an interesting point because in that journal poll I referenced, only 5% were undecided at that time. You know what I mean? Everyone was pretty much where they were going to be. So how does that change the tactics? And they're exactly right. And then secondarily, statewide bounce here. What does this mean for our legislature, for other counties? Dee Dee mentioned Valencia. How are people to view this and change their tactics accordingly?
Well, certainly I think that one of the factors in that 10% that we were talking about that changed is that you had people from other parts of the state come to Albuquerque to work, and particularly on the pro-choice side.
Sure.
I know there were people from Santa Fe, activists, that made the trip as recently as Monday. They were coming down and doing canvassing in Albuquerque. So I think the fact that this is an important statewide issue. We wrote a piece in the Santa Fe Reporter several weeks ago about how there are no more abortion service providers in Santa Fe. So if you're a woman and you require that service, you've got to travel to Albuquerque. If you need follow-up care, you've got to get back in the car and come back to Albuquerque. And so this wasn't just an Albuquerque issue.
Right. What's interesting about that too, because it seemed to me what also changed was folks who were for this used effectively the term late-term abortions. But it turned out once the other side, the folks who were opposed, started putting a little more color on that, it's a vastly more detailed and difficult decision one has to make at 20 weeks. There was a lot more to it. Did you have that sense as well once those personal stories started coming out?
Certainly, this is a decision to have an abortion at that point in a pregnancy is really a different decision than one that you would make 3 or 6 weeks into a pregnancy. And I think that there was a lot more discussion about that as the real details of this started to emerge.
Would you agree with that, Senator?
Well, I think that the opponents of this measure did an excellent job of messaging and making sure those details did come out. And they ran an excellent campaign. They were united. They used personal stories. They used doctors.
That's right.
There was a very effective TV commercial with a doctor.
Female doctor.
A female doctor,
sure.
yeah,
Yep.
Dr. Sandra Penn. And it, I think, really resonated, and it resonated with Hispanic women, contrary to popular polling and popular belief. And this is something I looked at when I looked at the results and the polling data too, and that is the Valley area, where you would expect the heavy presence of the Catholic Church, heavily Hispanic, opposed. Mostly Hispanic women were voting in this election, and where I live in the North Valley, I voted early, and the polling officials told me the turnout had been extremely heavy, and it was mostly women.
Right.
I think another important,
go ahead.
excuse
That's
me,
okay.
another important thing to consider here is we heard the word erosion a lot. That perhaps you have a strong feeling about this 20 weeks issue, and you don't believe a woman should get an abortion at that point of a pregnancy. But if you look at this from a broader view, if local government is allowed to, or if local voters change what abortion providers are permitted to do, that's going to have an effect on all the other services. And so it wasn't perhaps this one part, but really looking at the whole.
That makes sense. That
That
absolutely
changed.
makes sense.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think that's, to Senator Feldman's point, that's where the pro-life organizations went wrong.
Right.
Is that they took a lot of the audiences that they thought, okay, Hispanic, Roman Catholic, of course they're going to vote for us, and totally took them for granted, and as a result got their hat handed to them.
Gotcha. Yeah.
The other thing,
interesting.
too, just to underscore that
Please.
earlier point about how people have made up their minds about this.
Right.
You take a look at the hard data of the number of people who came out in early voting.
Yeah.
They had made up their mind well before
Right.
the election.
They didn't get any help from the ballot itself.
Did anybody bother to read any of that?
I did.
It was like
yeah.
1,000
It was very politicized.
words
I was like,
long.
holy cow.
1,200 words? I mean,
Yeah.
it's just really quite something. Next up, I speak with the director of an innovative program delivering healthcare expertise around the state.